Hello, my loves. Continue to update new stories on Reddit, and don't forget if you like it, please subscribe and like it. Now let's start new stories. Story, Barn Loft, Horror Story. I stopped counting the days after I got around 15. I would have kept going, but I couldn't. I had lost all hope. We stopped wondering if jumping down to escape was an option after watching two boys try to make a break for it. They injured their legs so bad, they couldn't get up, and we watched him drag them away from our sight. We didn't see them again. One by one, the companions I had made came and went, until some of them stopped coming back to the loft altogether. They had been there longer than me, but I knew my time to go where they went was coming soon. Whenever I heard his ladder clang against the loft, I panicked, only remembering to breathe when I wasn't next. Normally when the ones who were taken came back, they never said anything more than a few mutters about experiments. They stayed like that, unmoving, barely talking, until they were taken down again. One girl was able to tell a bit more about what had happened. He would take them into a room that looked almost like one at a hospital, strap them down onto a table, and put an IV into their veins, which coursed an unknown substance into them. He said it would change them. There was more she wasn't telling us, and I couldn't tell if she'd stopped talking because she couldn't remember or just didn't want to relive it. We never knew his motive until it was evident that a couple who had come back had noticeably changed. The look in their eyes was wilder, they moved in awkward, jerky movements, they weren't human anymore. The rest of us stayed far away from them for as long as we could, unsure of the better option, becoming them or disappearing forever. We didn't have a choice, but the thought of one or the other was almost as terrifying as our situation. It wasn't hard to pick up on his schedule. He might have been mad, but he was methodical. The plan was to wait for him to leave with his tray of tools, none of which I recognized. He always took a long time to clean them. We didn't know exactly where that was, only that it was outside the barn. I didn't know whether to be anxious or flattered that he took the time to clean them up before using them on his next experiment. After he had left with the tray, we were to crawl out the hole in the wall where multiple kids had unknowingly teamed up to tear away at the old boards of the wall when he wasn't there. It wasn't very noticeable on the inside, because we'd just put the boards in front of the hole and hide it. Even though he kept us in a loft, making it so we couldn't jump down on the inside, the outside proved to be easier. Through the hole, we were able to see a small roof right there that we would be able to get on to use to get onto the ground. I wasn't as optimistic as everyone else. I had almost started to look forward to my turn with him and wanted to know what would happen. I was still terrified of him, though. I saw what the stuff did in the IV did to the others before they were killed or turned into a mutant. It wasn't something to look forward to, but what else was I supposed to hope for when escape hadn't been an option? When the time came to execute our plan, I may have actually felt a twinge of optimism, though I found myself saying it wasn't going to work. But, after all that time of being here, watching everyone around me disappear, maybe I was finally getting out. We uncovered the hole and the first person went through. Everything was going as well as it could. Until that first person on the outside fell through the roof we were supposed to get on. In a panic, someone else went out, too, maybe to see if it was possible to avoid falling through as well. They didn't and managed to lower themselves enough to safely jump onto the ground. This gave the rest of us hope. However, the crash of someone falling through the roof had not gone unnoticed. He was back inside now, yelling. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but I didn't need to. I was buzzing with so many thoughts and feelings, my blood turned cold as I realized this may not work. The sound of his footsteps urged us to get on with the next kid's escape. The clang of his ladder caused us to scramble to get through the hole before he could make it up there. I got through and saw the opening in the roof that had been left from the first escapee. It was barely avoidable, but the ones who went out before me had went around it and made it to the ground. I could, too. All I had to do was lower myself onto the ground. Even though they could have already run off, the ones who had made it out first waited, arms open, ready to catch me. It all happened so fast. I was pushed before I could figure out how to get down fast enough without hurting myself. I fell onto the people below me and someone else fell on top of me. It just had to be one of the mutants who had pushed me, now crushing me between them and the people underneath me. We were disoriented, the sunlight was blinding and the sounds of nature suddenly around us overwhelming. Our limbs were a tangled mess. I couldn't tell my arms and legs from the people I landed on or the mutant kid weighing down on me. I heard words of praise and the mutant's weight lifted from my body. I thought we were free until I saw him. He caught us before anyone could make a move to get up. Story, Broken Lights, a short horror story. Her breathing was wheezed. Her pacing was quick, and her focus was everywhere. Sasha's adrenaline was spiking her heart and movements in a way that shouldn't be possible. Her energy was almost endless because of it. The screams of the hostile beings running after her were loud, ear-splitting even, sounds that would render someone's throat raw if attempted to replicate. Their footsteps matched her pace, if not quicker. Feet sprinting in the grass that shuffled from theirs and her own movements. The grass surface turned to cement. Her shoes clunked against the hard surface as she ran for her life. Dodging towering metal crates and screeching monsters, her way was blocked by a looming metal warehouse. Seeing no other option, she kept her pace up for its wide-open door. Hearing one of the creatures behind her grow ever so closer, feet getting faster and louder, breathing more quickly and heavier down her neck, she dove for it. The moonlight was masked by pure darkness, her body toppling to the cement ground of indoors, her flashlight shattering on the ground. Turning to look at the open door, she threw herself up. It screamed before she threw the door closed, turning the lock. Her breathing wheezed, shuddered as she slouched forward against it, resting her forehead against the door's surface. Her breathing was so strained it was difficult to pin it between her lungs begging for air or emotions taking over, and she was on the verge of crying. Either way, she was struggling. Her legs shook in weakness, the adrenaline fading and almost begging for her to collapse. She kept herself standing, however. Looking over her shoulder, she only just now realized that the building was completely pitch black. Her mind was too originally focused on escaping with her life still intact. Diving to her knees for the flickering flashlight on the ground, she picked it up. No. No, 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 no. The glass was shattered, the light bulb inside flickering in an attempt to stay alive. She smacked its surface onto the palm of her hand in aggressive attempts. That only seemed to make it worse. With one more firm pound of it against the palm of her hand, it died. The light dimmed before the entire building shrouded her in complete darkness. Her breathing shuddered. She was completely defenseless against the Weavers. The Weavers. Human hybrid creatures of complete hostility. Broad-shouldered human beings who have succumbed to their form. Clothes ripped and tattered to almost nothing but rags. Skin a sickly pale, black bags under their glowing orange hungry eyes like goggles, hands and feet completely black like they were burned, nails so long that they could reach their knees without even bending over, ears sharp and pointed, and jaws split into arthropod-like mandibles, salivating, clicking and screeching in communication. Their motivation is unknown, and so is their origin, for what she knew. But the way they treat humans is cemented and true. Angry, hostile, and deadly. Some kill on the spot, others drag them away, never to be seen again. She was pursued by 3 of them in that chase. From the glance she got over her shoulder, 2 were male, and the other was female, easily distinguishable by their appearance and host. The people at the safe house told her it was a bad idea to go out by herself. "Sasha, you'll get yourself killed." She took it anyway. Sasha lifted her head, staring into the empty black void of the warehouse before her. Adjusting her black long hair, she reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone. She opened up the camera and pointed her phone to the darkness before her. With a press of her thumb, the camera flashed. With the camera flash, the terrain was revealed to her for only a second. Towering metal shelving units with wooden crates. She hated that she could only see for a split second. She hated the dark. She doesn't fear it itself. She fears what might be hiding inside it. She fears that something would just jump out at her the moment she presses that camera button. Despite the fear growing inside of her, she pressed on. She slowly stepped further into the darkness to accomplish her quest that she started the moment she stepped out of the safe house. To find her 2 missing kids. It has been hours since she has last seen them since this whole problem began. A part of Sasha wanted to look for a light switch, but in reality, that would be fruitless. The town is devoid of any power. The power plant was ambushed by the weavers, the phone tower was attacked and the radio tower's cords were cut. The town is stuck in a blackout. No lights, no power, no communication to the outside world. They were isolated, and the world was completely ignorant of what this town is currently going through. Pressing the camera button on her phone again, it flashed, exposing her path for another second. She was slowly treading down a narrow hallway of towering metal shelving units. But in the end, it was hard to tell where she was going since all she could see was just a wall of darkness in her path. She pressed it again, and her heart stopped for a second. Laying on the cement ground before her in that second-long flash was a pink ribbon. She dove to her knees, shock overcoming her as she gently scooped up the pink, glistening ribbon. Her breathing shook as did her arms as she lifted the light little ribbon in her hands. Her daughter's ribbon. A ribbon fixed into a bow in the back of her head to make her hair ponytail, and here it was, laying on the ground and now clutched in her mother's hands. Lifting her head, looking forward, her heart stopped again. A shoe. A blue sneaker. Her son's sneaker. Sasha felt like she could cry. She buried her face into her daughter's ribbon, weeping for them. She could just imagine the situation they were in. Her daughter holding her brother's hand, leading him away, running, screaming, their young child's shrieks echoing in the warehouse before being caught by these monsters. She expected the worst to happen to them, and the thought would not go away. It brought tears to her eyes, water falling down her face as she sobbed into the tattered pink bow in her hands. A small part of her had a glimmer of hope. Maybe they were dropped in their escape. Maybe her bow wasn't fixed tightly to her head and unraveled off. Maybe her son's shoe slipped off during the run to safety. A choked breath jumped out of her as she lifted her head from the ribbon. Okay, she regained what little composure was left. Stay focused. With the mindset that they have escaped, she pressed on. She shambled through the darkness, occasionally pressing the camera on her phone to illuminate her way for a second. She stepped into a small opening, or at least it felt like she did. The thick air suddenly got thinner and it felt more open. Sasha shuffled forward through the dark, treading through a blanket of nothing. Her foot slipped on something wet. Her leg was thrown forward. Sasha gasped, toppling backwards. She crashed to the cement floor, the breath being knocked out of her. A groan growled from her throat as she sat up. She stared ahead to make out anything that she stepped on, but it was near impossible. Sitting up and shuffling to her knees, she lifted her phone to the floor, pointing the camera at it. With the press of a button, the camera flashed. Sasha's blood ran cold. Gore. Remnants of something tainted the floor before her. A pile of mutilated flesh, bone, and blood, rendering its shape completely unknown. Sasha flashed the light again. As if the first glance wasn't already sickening enough, the second one bore more answers. There were no traces of clothing in the fleshy mess. Instead, remnants of torn and ripped fur, which could mean it was an animal. An animal, sure, but as for what kind was completely beyond her. It was too messy, mangled, and bloody to tell. Movement caught her attention in front of her. Sasha's breathing spiked as she lifted her chin. For the time she has been in the dark warehouse, her eyes seemed to have adjusted ever so slightly. In her vision, she could make out two shelving units side by side. One of them shook. Sasha's breathing shuddered as she stood up. She stared at the wall of darkness in front of her. A low, gurgling, croaking noise filled the dead silence in the warehouse. Sasha slowly lifted her phone, pointing it at the darkness before her. Her arm shuddered as she did. A whimper came out of her as she bit the bottom of her lip. She pressed the camera button on her phone. The camera flashed. The weaver shrieked. Sasha screamed, the male creature shielding its eyes from the blinding flash of the camera light. Her feet reacted, attempting to back her away from the hostile creature. The humanoid creature strained a scream back, pouncing from its narrow space between shelving units onto her. She was forced to the ground as it straddled on top of her. Sasha struggled as the creature pinned her to the floor. A shriek left its throat and passed the 4 large mandibles of teeth in its mouth. She threw her arms into directions, but it kept a firm grip on them to keep her still. Its alive eyes narrowed inside the black bags under them as a strained noise left its throat, its salivating tongue flinging out of its mouth for a quick moment. It lurched its head forward. A blood-curdling scream echoed throughout the warehouse from the poor victim as the sharp teeth punctured the flesh of her neck. Story: Firehouse First Horror Story. In the desolate wilderness of northern Alaska, an old firehouse stood abandoned, its once vibrant facade now crumbling and overgrown. Locals whispered tales of hauntings, stories of eerie cries echoing through the desolate halls and sightings of a sinister figure lurking in the shadows. As a family road trip wound its way through the remote region, a seemingly crazed man stumbled into their path. His eyes were wild, his voice hoarse with fear. He warned them of the horrors that dwelled within the abandoned firehouse, of creatures that roamed the surrounding forest. Unfazed, the family dismissed the man's ramblings as the delusions of a madman. The father, determined to prove him wrong, ventured towards the abandoned building. As he approached, the air grew thick with a sense of dread. The firehouse loomed like a cursed monolith, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti. Ignoring the ominous signs, he cautiously stepped inside. Darkness enveloped him as he explored the desolate interior. The sound of his footsteps echoed through the empty halls, amplifying their own fear. Suddenly, a faint glow illuminated the far corner of the room. Drawing closer, they beheld a horrifying sight. A grotesque, shadowy figure emerged from the shadows, its form contorted and twisted. Its eyes burned with an otherworldly glow, and its long, sharp claws scraped against the floor. The father gasped in terror as the figure slowly turned towards them. Its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. A guttural growl escaped its throat, sending shivers down their spines. Frozen in place, he watched in horror as the figure advanced towards him, its eyes fixed on his neck. In that moment, they realized the truth in the madman's words. The abandoned firehouse was not haunted by mere ghosts, but by something far more sinister. As the figure drew closer, its form shimmered and transformed. It became a grotesque caricature of a woman, her body draped in a tattered wedding dress. Her eyes were filled with an ancient rage, and her mouth twisted into a cruel smile. The Pock Lady, as the locals called her, was the mistress of the forest's demons. With a flick of her wrist, she summoned a horde of creatures that lunged at the father. Amidst the chaos and terror, the family fled the cursed firehouse, their screams echoing through the desolate wilderness. As he stumbled back to their car, they could hear the laughter of the Pock Lady echoing behind them. The sound of her cruel mirth haunted their nightmares for years to come, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked in the shadows of the abandoned firehouse. Story: Ghost in the Bedroom. It was a small, unsuspecting bedroom, decorated with soft purple walls, white trim, and a built-in with drawers on either side. The full-sized bed sat high in the center of the room, perpendicular to a small crowded closet and a single window, with just enough space to walk around. The room was nestled on the corner of a second-story brick house, the window overlooking a gentle rolling hill carved into two by a two-lane road. Behind the house, within 50 feet of the sloped, uneven backyard, lay a dense forest that stretched on for miles. Inside this small room, I found refuge. I was a typical teenager, rebellious, moody, and given frequent conflict with my family. I preferred to be alone. Each night, I would retreat into my room, shut the lights, and dial into my laptop. The laptop was merely a vessel for a hobby that I was indulging in. Inspired by a film class, I began watching all kinds of movies, both old and new, from the comfort and solitude of my bed. In that dark room, the world seemed to melt away as the screen danced with images of other worlds. Their stories distracted me from the chaos and emotion that simmered inside of me. Weeks passed and a routine began to take hold. Many times, after leaving the room for a bathroom break or a quest for the perfect snack, I'd discover my cat, Emmy, must have snuck in behind me. She was a short-haired black cat, impossible to see in the dark behind the screen, but I could feel her jump onto the bed and settle into the corner. One particular night, I retired early, and it was not long into my second film before I felt the familiar weight at the edge of the bed. Smiling, I shifted myself to give her room and nestled back into the sheets, but was abruptly startled by my door whipping open. My mom stared into the room, looking visibly confused. "Did you just walk into your room?" she asked me. "No." I responded hesitantly, "I've been in here for a couple hours." She took several paces into the room, looking around the edges of the bed, and pressed again, "Do you have a friend over?" "No, it's just me and Emmy in here." "Why? What's wrong?" She turned on the light, and I sat up and looked down at my bed to see a large indent, still creased from the weight of her, was empty. I looked to both sides of the room, but she isn't there. Puzzled, I look back at my mom to see a fearful look in her eyes. "I watched a girl walk into your room. I saw her in the hallway." "Are you sure it wasn't you? No one is in here?" "I'm sure," I answer her. Fear began bubbling up deep inside of me, but I swallow hard to try to force it back down. "Okay. Never mind, then," my mom says dejectedly and closes the door as swiftly as she opened it. Stunned, I sat quietly in the darkness, illuminated solely by the dim light of my computer. The energy of the room seemed to have shifted. It no longer felt comfortable and safe. I felt scared. Who could she have seen, I wondered? Was it real, or a trick of the eye? And where did Emmy go? My stomach twisted with anxiety, unsure of what to believe. I took a deep breath and pressed play on the laptop. This will help keep my mind off things, I thought to myself. 10. Maybe 20 minutes go by and I feel the familiar weight press into the edge of the bed. Pausing the movie, I sit up and whisper, "There you are," as I begin reaching for her. My hands pat around the blanket, but I don't feel her. I climb out of the bed to turn on the light when I suddenly realize that my door is closed. She couldn't have gotten in. Eyes wide, I dart to the light and switch it on to find the indent slowly leaving the bed. Emmy isn't in the room. Chills seemed to dance across my skin, giving rise to a sea of goosebumps as the realization seeped in. In an instant, I shut the lights back out. Diving back into bed, I slammed my laptop shut and pulled the sheets over my head. I squeezed my eyes shut as I heard my bed creak under the weight of it. Turning my back to the edge, I willed myself to sleep. It can't hurt me if I don't give it the energy, I told myself. My blood ran cold as I felt a hand on my shoulder, tugging me, beckoning me to look at it. The grip seemed to grow stronger, and from the corner of my eye, a dark figure towered over the bed. I whispered over and over for hours for it to leave, that it was not welcome. I whispered until exhaustion won the war versus fear, and the world went still. It was the last night I ever stayed in that small, purple room. Story, Horror of the Mundane. It was a bank, the same bank, the unchanging bank that I always walk to do my job as a teller. I've trudged to this bank every day now for about 5 years, copying my footsteps which are ingrained into the muddy pathway. I took one step out of line, making a new footprint, a little painting of rebellion. I hated this morning, just like most of the rest. Rows of annoyed people trying to be done talking to me as fast as possible so they can get out of this building that none of us wanted to be in. I can never remember the person, but I recall clearly the same few expressions they bear. Barely suppressed annoyance, subtle hints of desperation, sunken eyes made containers for financial despair. All of these emotions resonated with me, as I experienced them myself, but it never brought me any closer to the clientele. Rather, our shared negativity made the bulletproof glass at the counter seem ever thicker. It was boring, actually no, it was agonizing. The constant repetitive work would have been made decently pleasant if I had access to audiobooks, or some form of a means to entertainment, but the constant interaction with people rendered me unable to dull the already indistinct. I just wanted something to end, to signify that one day was different from another. I didn't want to work at the bank. I could work in other boxes, but the excitement of novel packaging would be quickly overridden by routine and the consequences of a lower wage. "Hey, Mr. Teller, can you see me?" A client squawked at me. I recoiled, snapping out of my daydreaming. "Sorry, didn't get much sleep last night, how can I help you?" I responded in my rehearsed customer service voice. The client looked displeased with his wrinkles on his forehead, scrunched up in what resembled a contour map of a valley range. But there was something different about his demeanor. His eyes kept on darting around, not being able to focus on anything. His frown wasn't the usual frown brought on by the frustration of a forced hand, but the annoyance brought on by the anxiety of a looming threat. Like how you feel when a group member suggests something stupid the day before the exam project was due. The man clutched a piece of paper which he passed through the 10mm portal in the glass panel while saying, "Read this." The paper was crinkled with writing on it which wasn't handwritten but glued on by taking pieces from newspapers. It said, "I have bomb, so give me 10,000. I was stunned. This idiot in front of me thought he could threaten me with an obviously fake bomb threat and a shabby letter? I nearly laughed. I had been trained once on what to do in these situations: press the emergency button and distract the criminal until police arrive, which would take a surprisingly short amount of time since they were stationed just up the street. So I pressed the button, but since I was so surprised and humored by this unusual situation, I made it quite obvious that I was pressing a button. I thought it didn't matter, but the criminal decided to prove me otherwise and convince me of the sincerity of his threat. So he threw a pouch from the bag he was holding into a queue the aisle over. The throw was followed by an exhilarating bang, and a small splatter of fresh red blood on the glass in front of me. Through the ringing of my ears, and the shock on my eyes, I saw and heard people start running from the corks-laden epicenter of new experience in my life. The fear I felt was to die for. People on TV describe events such as these with words like traumatic and horrible, and I'm sure it was for them, but this moment, for me, was my most reaffirming. Naturally, I quit working the bank the week after the event. I got a compensation package, but more importantly, I got on the news with an interview. I felt really guilty for not taking the threat seriously, but I was told that the guy was suicidal and would have detonated the bomb no matter what I did. In the end, days like that day ground my existence. After all, there is nothing like a tombstone to mark the remains of a stagnant story. I am only a mannequin. Today I am standing in my usual place between the men's coats and the children's t-shirts. They opened the shop 1 hour and 27 minutes ago, but unfortunately time does not equal customers, which can lead to a somewhat boring day for me. The customers are allowed to enter and depart the facility whenever they please, but if I had it my way, I would lock every single one of them in with me. Not specifically to harm, but more so to observe. Customers always stroll by me far too quickly for me to observe. This is troubling, but what am I to do? Nothing. For I am only a mannequin. New questions, lost answers. This is all that I am ever handed. I simply cannot comprehend what it is that these customers do. Do they hunt? I do not know. Do they eat? I do not know. Do they bleed? I do not know. Do they die? I do not know. For I am only a mannequin. Customers are a strange thing. I have not seen it, but I have heard that they trade in this facility. Trading? Is this what they do? Seems quite silly, but who am I to judge, for I am only a mannequin. Apparently they choose items that they desire at the time, then take these previously mentioned items to the beings who are not customers. These beings resemble customers, but unlike regular customers, they seem to be tied to this facility. They do leave, but they always come back, and the way to tell them apart from customers is by their tags. These tags all say something different. My favorite non-customer is tagged Jonathan, and he has smooth brown skin and a nice TD smile. He is always walking up and down the aisles next to me fixing shirts and coats previously unfolded by customers. Jonathan does look at me from time to time, but it is nothing more than a quick glance. I do not blame him though. I cannot move nor respond, which would lead to very boring conversations. But what am I to do? For I am only a mannequin. I do not know if Jonathan likes me or not, but it does not matter much to me. All that matters is that Jonathan keeps coming back so that I may observe. Observe. Is this my purpose? Seems quite boring, but maybe a purpose can be boring. Jonathan and the other tagged customers' purpose appears to be rather tedious and dull. Fixing customers' messes and tending to their every need. Pathetic. But I cannot help but feel pity towards them. Some of them, that is. I do not pity the one tagged Zach. Zach has taken me apart and placed me into darkness many times. I do not like it when Zach takes me apart. It doesn't hurt. I just don't like it. I do not like seeing that I am held together by screws. But every time I'm dismantled, I can't help but wonder if Zach is also held together by screws. It would bring me great pleasure to dismantle Zach. I wouldn't even bother putting him back together. But I don't think that customers and tagged customers can be put back together. One time not too long ago, I happened to see a customer missing an arm. I would have offered mine, but, of course, I cannot. For I am just a mannequin. I see various types of customers. Big ones, small ones, sometimes really tall ones. But, according to my observations, this does not matter to the customers as much as one specific thing. What is this thing? It appears to be color. So far the colors I have seen of customer have been various shades of brown and cream. It does not happen often, but on occasion a couple of customers of different color who seem to be unfamiliar with each other will critique each other's character based on said color. This is strange. They are all customers, yet they still attack each other. Why? Do the colors evoke some sort of strong hatred whenever they are seen by a customer of a different color? This cannot be the answer, because most of the time the customers get along no matter what color. It makes me feel warm. Not warm like the air conditioning in the facility, but warm like a bad kind of warm. Every time I think about how foolish the customers are, it burns me on the inside. If the customers make all of these clothes that surround me in different colors, then why is it so hard for them to accept customers when they are different colors? It burns me inside, but I like this feeling of warmth. It's somehow comforting to know that these beings can make all of this stuff that surrounds me yet still not be able to come together as one. It's pleasing to my very few senses to know that while they all throw away their pleasures and privileges, I can stand in my usual place between the men's coats and the children's t-shirts and observe as their world collapses around them. It gives me joy, and why shouldn't it? It's the only thing I can do. I can only observe. For I am only a mannequin. Story in the abyss. Head throbbing, pain shooting everywhere in my body. Is this a dream, or am I dead? Taking a big breath in was painful. I could barely fill my lungs before the pain was shooting everywhere, feeling like million tiny daggers stabbing me right inside my muscles and bones. Focusing on moving my fingers and toes, making sure if anything was broken. Opening my eyes, at first everything was dark, there wasn't anything to see. When my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I could vaguely make out shapes or something in the dark. Taking a second to listen, to take in where I am now, it was so quiet, it felt like I could hear my thoughts. Nothing shows any sign of life. Gathering my strength to pull my right arm from its position to start pushing myself off the ground, having every muscle of my body screaming at me to stop moving, but I didn't want to just lay here to die. When I tried to use my left arm, but when I realized it was under something I couldn't make out. When I tried to pull it out, it took some strength, but I managed to get it free. Getting to my knees, looked around me. There were so many shapes in the darkness. I was in a pile of something, but I don't know what. Then something hit my nose, a horrible gross smell, as if a bag of food has been sitting out in the sun on a hot summer day. It smelled musky and horrible. I didn't even want to breathe. It was making me gag a little. Remembering I had on the jacket, I felt for the zipper to undo it, taking off the jacket to only put it on backward to use the hoodie as a mask. It cut the smell down a little, but I could at least manage. But now I didn't know what to do. I was stuck somewhere with this horrible smell and can't see hardly anything. I tried to recall how I got here, remembering where I was before this, remembering I was at a bus stop. I was going somewhere and I got a phone call. The tone was so clear in my head in this silence, as it was this ugly lame default ringtone my phone had. For some reason now I can recall and hear that tone clearly. Listening closer, I was hearing that damn ringer. It wasn't in my head, there was a phone somewhere in this darkness, meaning a source of light, and hoped to contact someone. Getting to my feet, I listened closely as the sound seemed to be echoing around the space I am in. Turning around, I could see a dim light coming from somewhere seeming far away. Without another hesitation, I forced my body to move, stepping on the shapes I was seeing and tripping constantly as I didn't know where to step, hoping whatever is causing this ringtone to go off, it didn't stop, it would stay on until I can get to it. Luck was not in my favor as the light and ringtone went off. Standing in this darkness again, I closed my eyes and prayed the ringtone would start again, my heart growing heavy as that phone could have been my one chance out of here. Feeling the hot tears swell in my eyes as I want to cry, begging for that ringtone again. Now in this silence, I took a moment to think about the shapes I was walking on, taking my left foot and moving it around until it hit something to my left, putting my foot on it. It was kind of smushy in some places, but hard in others. I didn't know what I was stepping on. As I was about to bend down to inspect whatever was under my foot, the ringtone broke the silence again. My prayers were answered without giving it a second thought. I went in the same direction, hoping it was the same phone form before. Soon the light came on, it had to be the screen, it was closer. As I got closer, I could see something was covering the screen, but it was still giving enough light to locate where it was. Still heading towards it when the light was right at my feet, I dropped to my knees feeling for it. I felt the rectangle shape, it was a phone, feeling it was in some kind of cloth. My heart was racing and my hands were sweaty and shaking, trying to free this phone before the ringer stops again. But I couldn't find an opening grating to just the cloth. I shook it, hoping the phone dropped out of whatever it was. I didn't stop until I hear the plastic and concrete hitting together. Finally seeing the phone screen, reading it, it was an alarm that said date with Annabella at 5. The shock of waking up in this dark hellhole was starting to wipe away as I picked up the phone and I dismissed the alarm. Seeing another person's face that I don't know on this screen, I wiped down to get the toolbar. Seeing the flashlight icon, I took a breath before hitting it as the light turned on. The worst scenes for any other human being to see was happening in front of me. Where the light touched was bodies and more bodies laying on the ground, all of them lifeless. But not a single fly or bug was down here looking at these people's faces. One girl I could see had pretty red ginger hair and beautiful green eyes. Her skin looked so warm. Still, I reached out, touching her forehead. There was still a little bit of warmth in her skin. I could feel my whole body tremble. My eyes burned with tears as my throat ached. I hate crying, I hate feeling so weak, but what else can I do? I screamed at the top of my lungs. I cried so loud, wanting anyone to hear me. If there was even a chance someone could hear me, I kept screaming and screaming and screaming. Story: my dead friend is haunting me. In 2020, I, 18-year-old, became best friends with a girl who I had gone to school with for years. We were both starting our sophomore year in high school at the time, and we became really close because we had a lot of online classes together that year. We shared music with each other, traded funny stories, and talked about our dreams for the future. Out of all the people I had ever met, she was the most excited to grow up. She couldn't wait to get into her dream college, to start dating, to lose her virginity, to become a doctor and help people. It was all she could ever talk about, resenting the 16-year-old body and responsibilities that kept her from being at that point in her life. In early 2022, I had a falling out with her over a petty argument. We were both mad at each other and pretty much stopped talking. Later that year, right before our senior year would have started, she drowned. I wasn't invited to the funeral, and no one even knew she and I had been such close friends since we only ever spent time together online during the pandemic, texting and calling each other for hours at a time. She only had a few friends, and I didn't know any of them very well. Her parents were in an ugly legal battle over the nature of her death, and our high school pretended like she never existed. Back in August of 2023, almost exactly a year after her death, I was taking a shower in my family home's bathroom. For context, the bathroom has a light switch. It doesn't turn on or off automatically. When I was in the shower, I started thinking about her. The more I thought about her, the sadder I got, and all of a sudden, the lights in the bathroom turned off. I froze, looking around. No one had entered the bathroom and turned off the lights. And it wasn't a power outage because I could see the light from our hallway through the bottom crack of the door as well as the light from my brother's electric toothbrush charger still on inside the bathroom. After about a minute, the lights turned back on. A couple days later, I was thinking about her again driving home from work in the early afternoon. When I got home, the door to my room was closed, which was weird because I only ever close it when I'm inside, and I always leave it open when I leave. Between the time I had left and gone to work, no one else had been home, too, so it couldn't have been one of them. Even weirder, when I opened the door, all the lights in my room were on. My house always has all the windows and blinds open, so there's never a need to turn on the lights when it was light out. None of the other lights in the house were on. Barely anyone I've talked to seemed to know who she is, to the point where sometimes I wondered if I imagined her. But every time I open Discord, I see her profile on my friends list still idling, a year and a half after her death. I don't think her parents ever touched her computer after she died, so Discord has been open all this time. Every time I see her there, it's like a massive weight on my heart. I think about her every day, and I regret that we never made up. I wonder if she died thinking I hated her. Whether she's haunting me or not, I can't stop thinking about her. Not a day goes by where I don't wonder how she felt when she died, what she would be doing now, and if she can still see me. Does she resent me? Did she die resenting me? I guess I'll never know, but I hope that I keep remembering her forever so that no one forgets her. I hope that if she is haunting me or watching me and messing with me, she knows I'm sorry. Story, Night Walker. As the day comes to an end on Spring High School, two boys, John and Paul, were exiting the front gate. The boys were heading to John's house to hang out, have fun and play video games to celebrate the final day of school. As the night went on, the boys had more and more fun, happy that summer vacation starts the next day. As the final light gets snuffed out by the dark of the night sky, putting an end to the day, the boys tell each other ghost stories. One of the stories catches Paul's attention cause the story John told was about a dark 6.9 red eyes, white teeth man. Paul stared at John with a terrifying look on his face. John notices the color running out of Paul's face. John reaches over to shake Paul to see if he was all right. John shook Paul 3 times to snap him out of it. Paul raised his head and asked John in a terrifying, fearful voice, "Where did you hear that story from?" Paul and John became friends over this past year, so they don't know that much about each other's past. When John told the story, terrifying and violent memories, John looked surprised, and with a confused look he replied, "One of my old friends told me and found it off the internet." Why? Look like you seen a ghost. Paul thought to himself the ghost would have been more fun to miss with him, but no. Paul looked at John and told him everything. How the story his old friend told wasn't just a story but real. Paul continues by saying the last person that hears has to tell it to another person by midnight. John looks at Paul with concern and with a little fear in his voice. What happens to the person who heard it last but can't tell the story after midnight? Paul raises his head with a serious, frightening look. Paul said, "Goes missing and appears as a corpse." The room was dead silent, not a word was said. You can even hear the mosquitoes tapping on the window, tap tap tap. Then a loud alarm from John's cell phone ripped through the silence. John grabs his phone to shut off his alarm. John takes a second look at his phone, and he notices the time. John looks up at Paul with a dreadful look. Paul stared into John's eyes, then turns the phone around, presenting Paul the time on his phone. The time read 11:15 p.m. Paul's eyes widened when he saw the time. Paul grabs his belongings to run out of John's house, but John stops him and yells out, "What now?" Paul replied, "There is something I left out. If I make it home before midnight on my own, I see another day." John looked confused and spit out, "Explain." But the short version, Paul replied, "If the last person that heard the story can't find another to tell it to anyone, the only safe place is that person's home." John looked at Paul and yelled, "Well, what are you waiting for? Go, get out, go home." Paul grabbed all of his belongings and ran out of John's house. I ran down the street as fast as my legs could take me. I felt the exhaustion kicking in and collapsed to my knees as my hands slapped the ground. I took out my phone and glanced at the time. 15 minutes till midnight. I don't have enough time to make it home. What do I do? I raise my head to see there's a park on my left-hand side. I tried to avoid all parks in fear as I stood at the entrance looking at the park. It barely has any lights working. In the darkness, it looks like a dark figure standing along the way. I have no choice but to cross. As I'm crossing, I hit the middle of the park, the most creepiest area where I stand. In the middle of the park, the silence surrounds me, not even the breeze of the wind made a noise. As I'm standing in the middle of the park, the surrounding silence was hypnotizing. It felt time was standing still, then a roaring sound shattered the silence. My phone's alarm went off, breaking the trance that the darkness and silence had on me. I ripped my phone out of my pocket to check the time. My eyes widened. It was past midnight. The thoughts flooding through my mind. Oh shit, gotta get home, gotta get the fuck out of the darkness. As I was about to put my body into motion, I saw in the corner of my eye a shadow figure materialize. I turned my head, and the figure took the shape and transformed into an old man. The fear ran down my face with the thoughts of where did he come from, how come I didn't hear his footsteps, and why is he waving at me? Fuck no. I took off running in the opposite direction, heading towards the nearest exit. Running through the darkness, seeing barely any lights, approaching the exit that leads out into the street. Passing through the gate of the park, running out onto the street, not paying attention, smacking into a parked car. Picking myself up off the ground, thinking I got away. I think I'm going to make it. I raise my head, and down the street the old man I saw in the park waving, standing at the end of the street. My eyes filled with terror. My body told me to run. I ran back into the park, thinking if I run through the park, cutting him off and go passing him, I can make it home. Passing through the middle of the park again, heading towards another exit, hope and thinking that this has to work. Ran back onto the street using the second exit of the park. Full sprint in motion, I ran out of the park onto the street, not stopping, heading down the street. Passing where the old man was equally standing in the street on the other side of the park. With the continuing motion, my body is on autopilot, running down the street thinking I'm clever, I lost him, but I was dead wrong. Every turn I made, the old man appeared even more creepier, sinister, threatening, terrifying. Every time I come face to face with the old man, he became more monsterized and his eyes turned a bright red. Then the old man, now the monster, started chasing after me. My body was in flight mode. I took off running, my energy, my strength, and my body depleted as well. It was falling apart. But the fear of death was plaguing my mind. Only one thought ran through my mind: I have to survive, I'm going to live. In the long distance I can see my house. I thought I'm going to make it, but there weren't any lights on. A thought enter: my parents weren't home. I'm running up the stairs, throwing my bag in front of me, digging for my house keys to unlock the front door. I stuck my keys to unlock the door. I violently ripped open the front door, falling inside. The monster was chasing me before the monster realized that I fell into my house. I kicked the door shut, slamming it into the monster's face. Safe inside my house, I ran to my door, hitting all the locks on the door. Walking through the house, not a soul in sight. I walked up the stairs to enter the bathroom to turn on the shower. As the water was heating up, I left to enter my bedroom. As I entered my room, I hit the switch to turn on the lights, but nothing happened. I raised my head to look at the light fixture. As I'm staring at the light fixture, I heard my door slowly creaking, moving, then heavy breathing piercing the darkness. I slowly turned to see where it's coming from, two red eyes floating in the darkness. The monster approaches, staring down at me face to face. It raises its arm, then it grabs me by my throat. I'm trying to fight it, but all my strength and stamina bled dry. It was getting harder to breathe, feeling my body shutting down. My sight was getting blurry, and right before the darkness covered my eyes, glanced over at my clock. I saw in blue numbers the time. At 1:10 a.m. I heard a roar from the monster. The morning sun breaks through the glass window of Paul's bedroom. The only sound echoing through the house was running water. The shower that ran on all through the night echoing. In Paul's room, his phone went off, screaming where he dropped it. The phone rang and rang every time it stopped. The calls automatically went to voicemail. On the caller ID was John trying to get in touch. John kept calling, hoping that Paul would pick up. John kept calling and calling. Eventually Paul's phone went dead. John stared at his phone, a worried look ran across his face. Story: psychological horror. Oh, my head hurts. Where am I? What is going on? When I look around me, is it some small subway station? Yes, it is. But what am I doing here? Why isn't there anybody? And, oh no, I'm running to it, and yes, the exit is in fact walled. I'm scared, start to punch in that wall, but surprisingly nothing happens. Okay, keep your head still, look around you. But the only thing I can see is a light bulb. Slowly drifting from one side to the other. Doing that annoying noise. But there is no wind, how can it be moving? And that noise, it's driving me crazy. No. Keep rational thinking. There is just one way I can go. No exit, 2 of the tracks walled as well. There are 2 options. Left or right. Left or right. There is black darkness in both of them. I'm scared. What do I do? I go in the left one. No, I can hear something and run headlessly back. Okay, just breathe. Now I'm going in the right one. Everything seems good so far. Couple steps, couple more with a hand on the wall. I look back and can see just the faintest light. No. I can't go back, I must keep on going forward. Breathe, 1 step, then another one. Good, everything is fine. Don't think about anything, just do 1 more step. And 1 more. Good. I'm falling, I've stumbled over something. No, don't look at that thing, it's not alive, and that's all you need to know. God, did I hear something? No. It's just my brain making up things that are not real. Breathe, you can do it. More steps. Good, your legs are somewhat surer now. You can keep walking. Why is my breathing starting to go faster? Why is that dark so dark? What is that? No. It's nothing. Now I heard something. It's right behind me. No, it's next to me. No. Is it in front of me? What is that? It. Yes, it's me. What am I doing? Am I screaming? It does seem like that. Yes, it was me, now you know that you can calm down. My heart rate is returning to normal. I can go on now. 1 step. Then another. Yes, you're doing great. Now continue. It cannot be much further away. You can do it. You can do everything after all. Think about something positive. But about what? I can't think about anything. Wait a second. Who am I? What is my name? I can't remember. I stop. What is going on? How did I get here? And how is it possible I don't even know my name? What was that? Oh, I heard it. It's here, right behind me. Now I'm running. Running for my life. No matter what is in front of me, the only thing that matters is what's behind me. I can't hear it over my own heavy breathing, but I know it's here. It's omnipresent. It's my demon. I'm trying to get away from it, but it's still closer and closer. I can sense it. I'm running faster than anybody else has ever run, I'm flying. But that thing is still behind me. I just know it. If I stop, I die. That's the rule. I know them as well as it knows it. What's that? I see something. Is it some light? No. I must be hallucinating. Now it's gone. But I'm still running as fast as I possibly can. Yes, it is light. In front of me. Even though it is not possible, now I'm running even faster. I can see that blissful glow. I can feel it, I can smell it, I can hear it. I'm almost there. What? No. I fell. I must get up, that thing is getting closer and closer every second. But I can't. I can see that shine. But I look back and there it is. The darkness. The pure evil darkness. And the demon. Shining red eyes, hunting eyes, hungry eyes. Now it's the end. I know it, I can't fight back. I simply can't. Yes, it's moving closer. I turn my head towards that glow, towards heaven, but deep down I know what's coming for me. Hell, nothing more, nothing less. The hell. I wake up, screaming. What was that? It was so real. I can still see it all, I can still hear it all, I can still feel it all, I can still smell it all. It's here with me as well. I know it. It was a dream. But it was also a reality. I stand up and go open that window. I need fresh air. I need some fresh air to get myself together. Okay, it was nothing. I'm good. Yes, now with the air floating around me I feel just fine. And now what? Should I go back to sleep? Yes, I should, just a couple more seconds in this chill fresh air. In this fresh air. And now, what? Back to sleep. Yes. I make that step. But what? It is not towards the bed. I want to go to bed. Another step. Wait a second. Where am I going? Why am I climbing in the window? What? And now another step. And nothing else, there is nowhere to make another step. There will be no more steps for me anymore. No more of anything. Goodbye, world. Demon. I might see you again. I might see you very soon. Story, short horror story. My body is deep in a state of rest. I could not move or hear my thoughts at all because in this state I am frozen. My body is getting all the energy recharge in the world. I don't know how many hours it has been since I go into the state of silence. I know that I rest my body around nighttime, but I don't remember the time that I fall to sleep. It was probably 6 p.m., 7 p.m., or even 8 p.m. Those are the usual time that any person would choose to rest. As my eyes are closed, I can only experience the darkness around me. Honesty, I feel nothing. It is like my body is skipping time and space as I rest. Maybe sleeping is a type of time travel or any other form of manipulating space. In sleep, a person skips time by hours or even days. Sleeping is just a state of rest, but can it be used for experiments for time travel? It is unlikely because it is just a state of being frozen. As my body freezes into the darkness of time, I feel a hand touching me. I could not move or think about what could touch me. I ignore it because probably a bug. However, if my body was resting, how could I feel something touching me? Am I asleep or somehow awake, but I don't know. My eyes are still in the darkness of space and time, and my body is not seen, but still present. I try to find out what just touched me. I try to wake myself up, but my body is frozen. I couldn't move an inch at all. My eyes open. The eyes see the darkness of the room and anything around it. I think that I am awake, but still, my body is frozen in time. I couldn't move my eyes or limbs at all. I try to move, but a force is holding my body together. An invisible force that has control of time, space, and even reality. A silent entity that lurks in the darkness of the place around time and space. My heart starts to beat heavily. My body breathes a sigh of fear. I feel the touching again, but this time it is claws. It scratches my legs. I couldn't feel it, but I know that whatever is touching my legs are pulling vines from it. Luckily, I couldn't feel the pain, but it still causes my heart to beat heavily. My left and right legs show the red-soaked veins, which are cut from them. I try to look up, but my head freezes in a state of fear. My eyes look around and a figure appears. The figure stands by my head. The figure has claw-like hands. One side of its face has sharp teeth like a bear. Red liquid is on its teeth. The figure has spiders crawling out of its right arm. Its right hand has sharp teeth and red eyes. The figure looks like a girl. She looks like that she is in her late teen. The figure's body has a mouth with claws on it. Spiders, beetles, scarabs, and snakes are clawing out of her mouth. On the left side, its body looks normal. The figure has blue glowing eyes. On the left hand, it has a scare mark, which is from self-mutation. I have the look of horror on my face. The girl walks up to my arms. She pulls out her left hand and tells me to be quiet. I could not move anyway. Her claws cut into my arms. She forcibly pulls out the veins in my arms. I start to cry with the feeling of invisible pain. The girl looks at me with a smile on her face. Bugs and snakes crawl all over her eyes. She pulls out a blue and gold mask. One side of the mask is gold, while the other is blue. She puts it on my face. I try to stop her from doing it, but I could not move my body. I watch as the girl put the mask on me. I could not see what was going on. I hear the girl undressing my nightgown. I hear the cold air hits my naked body. I hear laughter around me. It sounds like a child. The sounds are all around me. I could not take it anymore. I try to force myself to wake up. I try to escape this horrible nightmare that I am experiencing. I scream with anger in my voice, "Get the fuck out of my head, you bastard," I say, but my mouth didn't move. The demand goes into my mind instead into the monster. Every time I try to fight it, an invisible force holds me. The silent force has me under its control. I keep hearing the laughter around me. I close my eyes to put an end to the nightmare. As I did close my eyes, the world around me turns into a dark place. All the darkness is around me disappears. I begin to go back to sleep. After minutes go by, I finally open my eyes. The laughter stops and at the same time, the mask is gone. I look around and my limbs are not cut. I boost up from my bed. I stand up with a look of fear on my face. I survived whatever happened to me. I feel the sweat coming from my face. I begin to cry. What was that? Sleep paralysis? A living nightmare? What the fuck, dude? I have thought that I could have died. I am glad that I didn't die. I look up at my door. As I walk up to the door, I feel something wrong. My body starts to play the beating of my heart. I start to breathe heavily. Sweat pours down my face. I feel something is behind the door. A benevolent force is behind the door waiting for me. It could have been my mind playing a trick on me. I slowly open the door. Every cracking sound the door makes I look behind and forward. My heart is racing as I open the door. When I fully open the door, I see nothing but a dark black hallway. I look with relief as I open the door. I am happy that nothing was behind the door. I walk into the hallway to the stairs and hear something behind me. "Don't go outside," the voice sounds like my sister, Edlita. In her voice, she sounds worry and concern. I turn around and see her. She has a scared look on her face. Her clothes are dirty. She smells like trash. She has not taken a bath in several weeks. On her body are bumps and infectious cuts. They have not been treated in weeks. The bumps are on her arms and face. Red boils are covering her arms and the cuts on her legs. The cuts are healed due to weeks, but they are long and deep. They are still visible to see. It seems like a knife did that to her. I look at Edlita with confusion on my face. How did Edlita get all of these bumps, cuts, and boils on her skin? Why haven't Edlita got cleansed yet? I believe my mother or father would have cleansed her or noticed the infectious things on her body. I look at her and said, "Where is mommy and daddy or big sisters?" I ask with seriousness on my face. Edlita looks at me with nervousness. She starts to shake when she hears that question. She tries to avoid answering me. I look at her and repeat the question. When I repeat the question, she sits on the hallway floor. She tries to avoid it again. I don't know why she is avoiding the question, but I could sense in her heart something is wrong. All around me that area seems off. I just woke up from a dream where a monster was using me to this questionable setting. The house seems to have this feeling of weirdness. It might be my mind playing a trick on me, but how is Edlida's unclean? She wouldn't be unclean because I know my parents. They would never let Edlida be dirty or smell like trash. I know my parents, where are they? Maybe this is why Edlida is avoiding my question. Something might have happened to my parents. Edlida, please tell me what is going on. I have to know because I need to know what happens to our parents, I say with concern on my face. Edlida seems to freeze as I ask her that question. Her eyes look at me. She points at the door on the left side. It is my parents' room. By it, there is a door to my brother, Alex's room. The reason Bella does not have a room because she moved out a long time ago. I walk toward my parents' door. I stand in front of it. I knock on the door. There is no answer. I knock repeatedly. Every time I knock, there was no one waking up. They are probably in a deep sleep, I think. I look at the clock on the wall. The time says 2 p.m. It seems odd for my parents to be sleeping, as they have never slept at an early time. They would go to sleep at 9 p.m., it could be due to oversleeping, but even that it seems unlikely of them. They wake up at 5 a.m. to get Edlida ready for school. She has to be at school around 7 a.m. I knock one more time. When I did, nothing happens. I decide to do what no kid would ever do, go in their parents' bedroom without knocking. I never did that because they might be having sex or they do not want to be bother. I have to break this unwritten social rule to find the underlying cause of this unusual event. I twist the knob and open the door. As I open the door, it hits me. A force of an unpleasant smell attacks me. The smell is of rotten eggs and shit mixed together. Their room smells like the underground sewer system of Morgantown. I gag and choke on the smell. I throw up on the floor as the smell hits me. I cough the puke in my throat. I try to breathe for oxygen in my lungs. I look in the room for a quick peek. I see my parents. What I see makes me want to die and throw up again. My parents lay on the bed. Their faces show the expression of terror and horror. Their lifeless bodies are frozen in the pain of torture and suffering. It looks like a person may have enjoyed watching their pain and misery. Flies and maggots cover their bodies. They are eating the inside of their flesh. Maggots cover the eyes of my parents, eating and tearing away from their eye sockets. The flies are doing their jobs, which are producing more maggots for them to survive. I couldn't believe what I am seeing. The flies and maggots are surviving, but my parents are gone. I jump back with my heart beating. I enter my brother's room. I walk in and smell the horrific hellish scent. I look at my brother, Alex. He didn't suffer the same fate as my parents. His eyes are closed and his mouth has no expression. I didn't see that has happened to him, but I did see a pill bottle. I walk into the room. I fight off the scent to try to investigate the pill bottle. I hold my nose to breath. As I am walking into the room, I feel my eyes tearing up. Water comes down as I walk. The reaction of the smell is causing the moisture in my eyes to dry out. They feel like bricks in my eye sockets. I grab the pill bottle. I run out of the room. I yell in pain as my eyes are burning. The stone brick feeling causes my eyes to ignite in pain. I try to blink to get moisture, but it was hard. My eyelids could not automatically blink. My body is urging me to not blink because it will hurt. I hold on to the stair railings. I force my eyelids to close. As they close, the pain registers in my body. It feels like my brain explodes. My head rings like an atomic bomb explosion. I yell in pain and suffering. My eyes start to get moisture. My eyes are back to normal. My head still feels like a war site. I look at the pill bottle. The label reads cyanide. It makes sense. It could be the only pill to be able to kill a person quickly. My parents must have put the pill into Alex's mouth during sleep. Then, they must have killed themselves. It must have been murder-suicide. That does not make sense. Why would my parents murder my brother? They are not murderers. They love us. They would never do that. Why is Adlilda still alive? Why did my parents not sneak into my room and kill me? Did my sister survive the killing, or did she murder all of them? My sister would never murder her loved ones. I look at the bodies. I notice something. What I learned from a mystery movie, there has to be a killer. By the look of my parents' faces, they could not be the killers. Someone killed them. My brother, Alex, must have been killed first. The reason I believe he was killed first is due to the layout of the rooms. His room was the first door at the top of the stairs. In addition, if the killer or killers killed my parents first, he or she would alert one of my parents, thus making the killing loud, not quiet. I look at my sister and say, "Who did this? Do you remember?" As I say that, she points toward the radio and looks at it. I look at it, and I see the power button and turn it on. When I turn it on, I hear a woman voice. She is a reporter of some local news anchor. I also hear helicopters flying and gunfire. The reporter says on the radio, "Today's news, it has been 2 weeks since a prisoner by the name of Fred Bella escaped from prison and unleashed a deadly chemical on the city. It caused people around it to die. We don't know how to stop it, but Frebella had." Before the reporter can finish, I hear a sound of growling. Within seconds, I hear the reporter yells in the radio, and it cuts off the connection. The radio went silent. I have a look of fear on my face. My grandmother did all of this. She caused all of this death and destruction. I knew it was a deadly chemical. I know it is possible to create a gas to kill millions. The Nazis did it to people whom they believed were inferior. How could one person manage to create a gas to kill off many people, especially since the person was in prison? I grabbed Adlida and carry her on my back. I walked downstairs and got in front of the door. I try to open the door, but Adlida stops me. She points toward a newspaper on the coffee table. I walk toward the coffee table and pick it up. When I pick it up, it's read "Deadly biochemicals causing humans to kill, free for all." The description of the paper is about how Fred Bella unleashes a deadly chemical, which causes people to become mind control and kill each other. Morgantown and Evanston were not the only towns affected by the deadly chemicals. The world is affected by the deadly chemical. The death toll was 800 million people and still counting. I drop the paper in fear. I look at Adilda with sadness on my face. I feel my heart breaking as I realize that my grandmother has completed her goal. She did more kills than Hitler, Stalin, and Zedong. How did she make the chemical weapon in prison? It could not be a reality. It is no possible way that she could have done this, especially in a couple of months. I have tears coming down my eyes. I did not want to cry. I wipe the tears from my eyes and open the door. My sadness turns into a complete loss for words. I look into the red skies and the burning hollow houses. I see death and destruction around me. I see the despair and misery of the deadly chemical on its victims. Their faces meet my worry eyes. Their empty and horrendous faces lay on the road of death with the others. This did not scare me because what I saw is beyond human understanding. People walking around the bodies, but their eyes are not alive. The smell of sulfur and fire cover the walking mindless people. They let out an animalistic growl. Their eyes are dark. They walk slow and long down the street. Reanimated corpses, I know it could be possible. I try to reanimate animals to create a mindless army with my chemical, but my grandmother managed to do that. The deadly chemical, was it mine? The experiment that I performed on dying animals, did my grandmother take my experimental ideas? It can't be possible because my grandmother was in prison. No, my experiment could not have caused all of this. My experiment was supposed to be used on guilty people, not innocents. My mother destroyed it. How could my grandmother copy my plan? The corpses look at my sister and me. They start to growl. Their hunger for flesh overcomes their slow walking, and they bolt at me. 12 corpses run toward me. They are yelling hey, hey, and hey. Me and my sister look as the walking dead bolted us. Story: The Forgotten Shadows. Open with eerie, unsettling music and a dark, gloomy background of an old, abandoned house. Introduce the protagonist, Emily, a curious urban explorer with a passion for uncovering hidden histories. Emily hears rumors about the old Rayburn house on the outskirts of town. The locals say it's haunted, but Emily doesn't believe in ghosts. She decides to explore the house, hoping to find some interesting artifacts or hidden stories. Emily approaches the house at dusk, capturing the decaying exterior with her camera. As she steps inside, the door creaks loudly, and a chill runs down her spine. The air is thick with dust, and the floorboards groan under her weight. While exploring the main hall, Emily finds an old, dusty photo album. She flips through the pages, seeing pictures of a happy family. Suddenly, she hears footsteps behind her. She turns around, but no one is there. Her heartbeat quickens, but she dismisses it as her imagination. Emily ventures deeper into the house. She hears whispers echoing through the halls and sees shadows moving in her peripheral vision. She tries to rationalize these occurrences, but feels an increasing sense of dread. She finds a door leading to the basement. Despite her fear, curiosity drives her to descend the creaky stairs. The basement is dark and damp, filled with old furniture and broken toys. She feels a cold breath on her neck and turns around to see a ghostly figure of a little girl staring at her. The ghostly girl points to an old trunk in the corner. Emily opens it to find newspaper clippings about the Rayburn family. They reveal a tragic story of a fire that killed the entire family, except for the little girl who went missing and was never found. Emily realizes that the ghost is the missing girl, seeking closure. Emily tries to leave the basement, but the door slams shut. The whispers grow louder, and the shadows close in on her. She understands that the spirits of the house are not malevolent, they are trapped, reliving their tragic fate. She promises to help them find peace. With the ghostly girl's help, Emily finds a hidden diary in the trunk. The diary details the family's final moments and the girl's escape plan that failed. Emily takes the diary and manages to open the basement door. As she exits the house, the spirits seem to fade, finally at peace. Emily leaves the Rayburn house, vowing to tell the world their story. She publishes her findings, and the house becomes a memorial for the Rayburn family. The video ends with Emily looking back at the house, now at peace, and a message about the importance of remembering and honoring the past. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.